I try to think of a different way to start the show every single time, and maybe that's an issue. Maybe I should just have a written script. I noticed as soon as I hit the I guess record now button, I still had my coffee mug in my hands. And it looks like Mitchell's joining us now too. We're just all over the place to start this episode of Out of Touch, episode number 3, as we bring in not only myself and Dustin Schutte, but Mitchell Page as well from his vehicle as he is traveling as he normally does. But welcome in, guys. We'll go ahead and start with the man who is. Well, let's let him get set up first. Dustin, how are you doing on this fine day in March? As we head into the the season of March Madness brackets. I know we're not really a sports show, but in this neck of the woods where we're from, that takes precedent around here. I feel like
it is my favorite month of the year, multiple reasons, but I don't think there's a better event in sports than March Madness, the bracket. I love it. And then you got baseball getting started, football spring practices. Man, it may be a sports-related show today, John. Gosh.
It may be. Dustin, for those of you, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, Mitchell was reacting live to the second half of an Indiana basketball game.
Yes.
Today, Dustin is watching Purdue take on Illinois in a battle of Big Ten heavyweights. It's not the second half, so it may not be as emotive as Mitchell's was. But nonetheless, he's still watching a competitive college basketball game. But that being said, Mitchell Page joining us from the road. Where are you at today, Mitch? If you can even hear us right now. He may be having some issues and working out some kinks with his audio and video, but I do believe he's with us. All right, so we're going to leave Mitchell to his travels. He tried connecting with us, but as you know, he is a traveling nomad, and he is in a place with some horrendous cell service. So tonight, you're just going to get Dustin and myself. And, sometimes that's the way it goes. But, yeah. Dustin,
do you know
thoughts?
Yeah, you know what I always do? Because I had this thought, and every week this happens. And I wonder if people can hear this in the background, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcast. My dog, Biscuit, will always start lapping water almost within the first 5 minutes of this show every week. And every week I make a mental note to put his water dish on the counter so he can't get to it for an hour. So that way he doesn't interrupt the show. And I always forget every week.
Maybe it's different from the listener standpoint, but I've never heard Biscuit slogging some water around.
Maybe it's just a distraction on my end then. Maybe there's nobody else knows what I'm talking about, but I can hear it.
Where do we go from here? So yeah, Mitchell's traveling. He won't be with us. So that I was going to bring back the town names tonight. So that's obviously not going to happen. I've got a set of new punishments that I believe Dustin, it's probably best if I just keep them secret. We're not going to talk about what the potential punishments are.
I think so. Teaser for next week.
Yeah. So
I have something.
Town names. What you got, Dustin?
So I had a thought. And I wondered if I was weird in this or if this is applicable to anybody else with any other job that they may have. Okay? And I don't know why I'm like this. I shouldn't be like this, but I am like this. Most people know that I'm a writer. A lot of people will tell me, whether it's on social media or to my face, they'll say, "Oh, I really enjoy your work." When that happens, most of the people, when I then talk to them and ask, they don't ever actually read my stuff. And it's they're trying to give me a compliment. They're trying to be nice. And I don't go to other people's jobs and hey, you're a really good salesperson, or you're you know what I mean? But
you don't just want to patronize them. Right.
So I don't know if offended is the right word, but it bothers me. If you read my stuff and you say good work, then we're cool. But if you just say it and then you don't actually read what I write, for whatever reason, it irritates me. I would tell you, John, because I know your work and I've worked with you, you're a great producer. I think you're a great producer. That. I don't think if I was just a listener, I would know what goes into production, and I don't know if I would be like, "Oh, John, you're a great producer."
Notice how he didn't say you're a good host. Notice how he didn't say that. He just said you're a good producer.
Exactly. We got some work to do on that end. No, but do you know, like, does that make sense? I don't know if I'm alone in this. Like, is this just a weird thing? Like, they're not trying to be mean about it. They're just trying to be relatable. But for whatever reason, it bothers me. And it's mostly.
Plus, you're in a field that I feel like it's very thankless in the sense that, and maybe that is why people do it. They feel like they need to make you feel better about what you're doing. But people in the journalism field and really kind of this whole sector that we're in, I mean, we don't really do this for the pay. And maybe I'm repeating myself when I say that, but we do this because we like what we do. We like writing, we like speaking, those types of things. We like producing content. And I guess maybe it just rubs us the wrong way whenever it feels like people are patronizing us.
I think that's the right word. I think patronizing is the right word. Like, and again, I shouldn't get upset about this because they're trying to be nice. They're trying to be supportive, but for whatever reason, and I just picked up on it. Like it's mostly like when I see somebody that I am familiar with or know, and I haven't seen them in a long time, and they're just like, "Yeah, you're doing great stuff." I'm like, "Oh, was there a particular story that stood out to you?" And there's a lot of stuttering involved. And then I'm like, okay, you didn't read, which, like, if you said nothing to me, I wouldn't ever care. Like, you don't have to bring up my job or anything like that. It's just, I don't know. I was just curious if anybody else had ever felt that way or if it was just a me thing. And I don't know that journalism is like a thankless job. It's not like the one that everybody raves about.
Yeah,
but
it's not like it's retail or, working in fast food, that kind of stuff. But
which, here's another topic. I think everybody should have to work like 6 months in retail or a hotel or restaurant, some sort of like customer face service industry.
So I worked in high school at a McDonald's for a year, which of course is stereotypical McDonald's. And it wasn't a bad work environment. It was honestly probably the best one might expect a McDonald's environment to be. So there's not like any major stories I have from that, nor do I have a one from the second one. But I also worked at a local seafood chain during my off times in college called Moby Dick.
Oh,
and it's delicious. Some people swear to it as the best seafood in Louisville. That's probably a bit of a stretch. I do enjoy it just because it is a local chain. It's not anywhere outside of the city. There actually is one in Jeffersonville, Indiana. That's the only one that's not in Kentucky, but it's all Louisville and the surrounding area. That's, free plug, by the way, I guess. Moby Dick would never pay me to say that, but it is good seafood. But I agree with you. It would be nice if everybody at least had to experience being in one of those types of jobs at some point in their life, because you kind of not only learn what it's like, I don't want to say what it's like to be treated poorly, but you learn how to be a better communicator, not only whenever things are hectic, but you have to learn to almost kind of be a servant to those who may not treat you the best. And I think if you're cut out for that kind of work, I guess it can make you a better person.
I think you learn.
That may
a lot.
be a stretch, but you know what I'm saying.
I think you learn a lot. Like, it helped me, and I'm still not the best at this. I'm still, I don't know, quiet, extrovert, introvert, something along those categories. But it forces you to like get out of your comfort zone. Yes. You're going to have to deal with frustrated people, whether it's warranted or unwarranted. I just think it's a good, like, I had never done it until I was, I don't know, late 20s. Like, I had worked in the service industry in terms of like, I was a fry cook at a restaurant when I was in college, but you don't actually deal with customers when you do that. So you're still working in a fast-paced environment. I just think you should have, like, dealing with people is such a good skill to have.
It is. And
I don't know. I just see, like, a lot of this stuff I've seen videos surface recently because I spend way too much time on Instagram and Twitter of, like, people just being rude and ruthless to, like, Uber drivers or cashiers or whatever. And I'm like, man, it's not worth, like, I'm sure at some point, like, it's probably gone both ways, right? Where you get like a rude customer service interaction, but man, So that's just what sparked my thought on that.
So a friend of myself and my wife's just told us a story last night, by the way. But somebody at their workplace recently got fired for the way they handled a customer service call. So the customer on one end pulled the FUB, saying some cuss words and that kind of thing. But in response, the person who got fired said, "Your mama," and that was it. Something as simple as that. And again, we don't really know how this person might have been as a worker in general. Maybe they had it coming, but I mean, sometimes it's that simple. If you can't be respectful, even when people are being disrespectful to you, it will cost you your job.
Yeah. I don't think I've had an experience quite like that, but you definitely get some interesting interactions with people when you work in one of those fields. Yeah. I mean, so
I mentioned March Madness earlier, and I'm Dustin watching Purdue versus Illinois. If you're watching the YouTube iteration of the show, you probably see him glancing up at his TV every once in a while, which I'm trying not to let that distract me. And I'm going to go and say this right now. I am very much ready for sports in general to be done. And it's not that I don't love sports, because I do. I love watching them. But because my job involves participating in a lot of things that require you to react to that. Like, for example, after I'm done recording this, I've got to go do a Louisville basketball postgame show tonight. Doing all of this, I'm just ready for it to not be the main priority of my schedule. It doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it or don't enjoy it, but I wish I could just sit back and kind of do what you're doing right now. And I guess there are times for that that I do have, but it is sometimes it's more so in the back of your mind. Like, I guess the grass is always greener on the other side, really, is kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, I try. So it's very different too. Like, I still love sports. I love my job. I love watching sports. I'll watch any sport, but there is I think people don't understand when your hobby becomes your job. It's a very different thing. Like, even when I watch the Purdue Illinois game, like there's a part of my mind that is a fan, and there's a part of my mind that's like, okay, how do I make this a story for tomorrow's, for the website tomorrow? And so you're constantly working. And it's funny because there are nights like, so Abby's obviously a huge sports fan, and sometimes it'll be like Monday night Biscuit makes his appearance on.
You love
Can you hear him sniffing into the microphone?
Actually, your microphone does a great job at not picking up sounds outside of your voice, from what I can tell.
Fantastic. But Abby's a huge sports fan, and there's some times where she gets bummed out a little bit because there's no sports on. So, like on Monday, there's no Big Ten basketball, right? Like,
that's true.
Typically, there's not a Big Ten men's or a women's game during the conference season. And to me, I need that day to watch an old movie, to watch Yellowstone, to just listen to music or catch up on podcasts, something to get away from sports for just a little bit. You always need that break. So I love basketball enough to where I'm not ready for it to be done, but I understand where you're coming from. Like, there was a time when I was working at Saturday Tradition and all we did was football before we kind of made that transition into covering basketball as well, where I didn't watch the NFL, and people would be like, why wouldn't you watch the NFL? I'm like, because I do 6.5 days of nothing but college football. I need a break from football to just do something else.
I know. Sometimes I feel like our calendar revolving around sports goes from August to April, especially if you just put football and basketball in that calendar, and then from April to August is almost kind of your free time, where you can kind of experiment with different stuff. And I guess, again, I've talked about burnout a lot on this show. Thankfully, I'm not experiencing the angry side of the burnout tonight.
That's good.
But I'll say this one thing. I'll get back to my main point, which is I am excited about March Madness. Around here, the Kentucky, Indiana area, it is probably the largest college basketball market in the United States. Maybe the Carolinas could be in there as well. But just the duo of Indiana and Kentucky with their large fan bases, not even just with Indiana, like IU and UK, but University of Louisville as well. They're pretty terrible if you haven't been paying attention. But even though teams like Louisville and more specifically for me, Indiana won't be participating in March Madness,
right?
It's still something that, because it's what I grew up with, getting excited about. It's hard to ignore just wanting to be a part of it in general. And obviously there's the sports betting aspect to it now, but filling out the brackets, that's been a tradition for, many people as well. I feel like that's kind of taken a backseat in recent years, maybe, especially with the betting being more of a thing now that it's legal almost everywhere, it seems like. But it's still fun. It's still something I'm going to do every year. I'm going to pick a national champion. I'm going to follow the bracket along with, especially one of the most fun things to do is on that opening day for the first round is just following your bracket along with each of the first few games until you get that first strike. You see how long you can be perfect. That's one of the most fun parts of the beginning of March Madness. I know I've kind of rambled along, so I'll let you say something, Dustin, but that's just kind of my feelings of this time of year.
Usually for me, it's the first game when I get the first strike. There was one time where I had all of the first round games correct until the last one. And Oof. I don't remember what it was, but it was like the 9:50 or 10:10 game of the first day. Or not, so not the first round, but the first day of the first round. I had 15 of 16 right.
Wow.
And it was the last game that cost me. But so you say it means something different to like where we live, where we're located, and it's always going to meet like, I don't know about you, and I think this is going to what you're speaking to. I get so upset and like just the FOMO, right? Fear of missing out.
Yes.
If my team is not in March Madness, I am distraught. Like I watch it completely different.
Yeah, it is. So I remember last year specifically, like obviously both Indiana and Purdue from your perspective were in the tournament. But you and I, if you remember, I'm sure you remember this, Dustin. You were visiting, you were in Bardstown, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And you and I were out to get food. And I don't remember if Purdue had already played or if they were about to play. But that was obviously the day that Fairleigh Dickinson, the second 16 seat ever, knocks off number 1 Purdue. And I that's a feeling as a fan that I've never experienced because, again, only Virginia fans and Purdue fans have ever gone through that type of fanatical agony.
I'm almost positive we went and got dinner the day after because I think I got like this is so funny. Only you are going to know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure I went across the street from the hotel I was staying at and went to this barbecue place called Sexy Plates.
Sexy Plates in Bardstown?
Yes, it's called Sexy Plates.
I've never been there. Hey, for those of you who live around my area, if you've been to Sexy Plates, call the hotline 502-830-9195 because I'm not aware of whatever the hell
it was unique.
Is.
It wasn't the best barbecue I've had, but what I will say is the sides were really good. But I think the reason I think it was the day after is because I remember I was facing the door, you were facing the wall, and I could see people coming in, and there was a guy who came in with a Purdue hat on, and I remember telling you, that guy is really brave to wear that hat here today.
I think you're right. I think it had already happened, if that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a fun time of year. As an Indiana fan myself, it's been a long time since I've, experienced a good run. I mean, I guess the best in my lifetime, at least old enough to remember it, was the Sweet 16 runs. They went to one national title game when I was 5 years old, but also did not care. I probably did not even know what was going on. And not that you can't remember things when you're 5 years old, but I mean, you're 5. You're more worried about, heck, what was even relevant? I don't know, watching SpongeBob. Something like that.
I remember.
By the way, was SpongeBob a show? And again, you're also 10 years older than me, or at least close to it. Was SpongeBob a show that your parents or people around you that were older said was going to turn your brain into mush?
No, we watched. I mean, from what I remember, we watched all those. My brother and I watched all those Nickelodeon shows, especially in the summertime, because it kept us from annoying our parents. So SpongeBob was up there. Fairly Odd Parents. My personal favorite was Hey Arnold. I loved Hey Arnold.
I don't want to call it a deep cut because I enjoyed it to an extent, but it's not a cartoon that I feel like many people would say was their favorite. What is it about Hey Arnold that you like so much?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I remember he was called Football Head or something like that. That was like his nickname or something like that.
Yep. I don't know if it was like, I don't remember what it was that stood out to me, but I just, for whatever reason, Hey Arnold was my favorite show of that.
What about Rocket Power?
Oh,
I feel like that was in the same vein as
that Hey was. Actually, funny story is when I lived in Orlando, we had Spectrum, and there was like there's an additional Nickelodeon channel, like Nick Teen or something. I don't know.
Teen Nick. Yes, Teen Nick. It's what Drake and Josh and iCarly and stuff were on back in the day.
But for a little while, I don't know if they still have it or not, but for a period of time, they would replay episodes of Rocket Power. It was like they would actually replay a bunch of the stuff we watched growing up. Yeah. But Rocket Power holds up. I would sit like in the mornings and eat my breakfast and watch like 3 or 4 episodes before I started work when I found Teen Nick. Another one, Rocko's Modern Life. That was a really good one.
Heard of that one, but I believe that's a little before my time.
Most of these probably are before your time. I'm trying to think.
I remember Rocket Power and Hey Arnold, though, for sure.
Rocket Power, Hey Arnold, Fairly Odd Parents, SpongeBob. I feel like there was one more, but I can't remember.
Jimmy Neutron?
I didn't like Jimmy Neutron.
Really? Was it the look or was it the show itself? Because it was more of the 3D CGI animated type of cartoons.
Oh, Dexter's Laboratory. That was the other one I was thinking of.
Dexter's Laboratory.
Yes, Laboratory. I did not like Jimmy Neutron. I don't know if it was because he was smart and I was not. I don't know, but I did not like Jimmy Neutron.
I remember one of the characters, I think it was Carl. It was Jimmy Neutron, there was Carl, and there was Sheen. Those were like the 3 friends or whatever. But one of them did this dance, and maybe it wasn't even one of those 2 characters. It was one of the characters. He had this dance where he would go slap, 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 clap, clap, clap. And it was one of the most asinine things, looking back on it, that anyone might thought of putting a TV show. If you're not familiar, just look up Jimmy Neutron, slap, slap, clap, clap, and it's, odd to say the least.
I like this little stroll down memory lane here. I remember eating like this. This is the stuff that reminds me of like going back to the summer, eating Lunchables or SpaghettiOs and just sitting in front of the TV, going outside and playing basketball for an hour, coming back in, watching TV, having a snack. Man, the good old days.
A couple more calls to action because the hotline's been fairly empty for a while, and I want to see if people will take the bait. The number is 502-830-9195. Share your favorite either March Madness memories, and it doesn't have to be about any of the teams we've talked about. If you're from somewhere else, let us know why you love March Madness and what it is about this time of year that makes you enjoy it so much, and tell us maybe, again, your favorite year of experiencing that. And then also maybe your favorite old school cartoon, especially if it's something that neither one of us have heard of. Let us know what it's about.
Yeah.
And that could be a fun discussion to get in on. So
yeah, if it's not something we mentioned, because there I'm sure there's a lot of cartoons that I just can't remember, but when I hear the name of it, that I'll probably it'll click and I'll remember it.
Yes.
So yes.
So 502-830-9195. That will send you to the voicemail line. And again, I've had people say before that they don't know how to it confuses them the way that it works. I don't remember how it prompts you, but I know at the very end it beeps. So once it beeps, that's when you leave the message. So there you go.
Perfect.
Crap, I just did it. I just did I didn't say well, but I said there you go.
Well,
I'm very conscious of it.
Are you really?
Talked about it.
Well, I did it last week, not even thinking about it. So now it's on my brain apparently.
Oh yeah. Dustin, it's also almost hiking season for you. Maybe it is already hiking season. I don't know what your temperature threshold is for getting out and enjoying the outdoors, but I know it's getting that close to that time of year for you.
About 40 degrees. Do you want to hear something really weird? Okay, so I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent. This is going to be me doing soapboxy things here.
Do it. Give me the 2.5 minute ramble like I do sometimes.
I might do that. So, number one, 40 degrees is really the threshold for me. I am really weird in that, like, I'll go hiking on really nice days, obviously, like that's great. But I really enjoy cold weather hikes or hot weather hikes. And I think it's because it like tests your body and it makes you, when you get done with the hike, it feels like you accomplished something. Like getting that, to me, there's no better feeling than getting that cold sweat going in the middle of winter when you're outside and hiking. And then in the summer, you're just drenched in sweat and all you want to do is drink a cold beer when you're done. So nice weather hiking, but I would prefer really hot or or maybe not really cold because I don't want to go out when it's like 10 degrees, but 40, 45, that's good. People probably don't know, but I am in the process of moving to St. Louis. And because the algorithm for your Instagram knows everything about you before you even type it into your phone, I've started getting advertisements for national parks in Missouri or state parks in Missouri. And there seem to be quite a few good ones. So I am really looking forward to this spring and summer, getting out, doing a little TLC action, chasing waterfalls, and exploring a new.
That's a song, right?
Yes,
Snow Patrol or something like that.
No, Chasing Waterfalls is TLC. That's why I said TLC.
I don't know. Snow Patrol has a song called something like that. Maybe it's something else. Either way, I'll let you get back to your tangent. I'll fact check myself.
Well, that's about it. Just I'm looking forward to getting out, chasing waterfalls. When you find a good waterfall, that's ideal. And then just getting out and hiking and exploring a new state of state parks and national parks. Also, so there's another call to action. If you have any recommendations for hiking in Missouri or really anywhere, because I'll travel to go hiking. So Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, Illinois. Arkansas, the Ozarks.
Arkansas,
Texarkana. I'm not going to Louisiana.
Chasing Cars was the song I was thinking of, not Chasing Waterfalls.
Oh, okay. Well, you were on the right path then. You were on
at least I wasn't completely off base.
Yeah, you weren't. Okay. But so to me, like TLC Chasing Waterfalls was huge when I was, so this goes back to the nostalgia of like being a kid. That was a huge song when I was growing up. So
TLC, is that at risk of sounding completely ignorant, I answered my own question. I was going to ask if that was the group with Beyonce and all that, but that was Destiny's Child.
Yes. Yep. Correct.
Is that a similar style of music though? TLC and Destiny's Child?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty similar.
Again, I guess I'm just a little out of touch today.
You're not out of, I don't think you're out of touch. I think you're younger than I am.
Sometimes I'll think about, like, when I realized we're just a couple days away from another recording this podcast, I'm like, why in the hell am I doing this at 26 years old? Because, I mean, I have so much more life to experience, barring something tragic happening. Not that I want to even bring that up, but sometimes I'm just like, what do I really have to say? And I know most of this podcast is really just us kind of having a good time and sometimes looking back on things and reflecting on things that we do in our lives, which is all fine and dandy. But sometimes I do get self-conscious, like, what have I really experienced? And a lot of times I feel like I haven't experienced a lot yet. But
I think, again, let me speak on that, because I don't think you give yourself enough credit, because, and the reason I say that's because I used to have the exact same mindset. Like, I haven't really done anything in my life. Like, I don't have any of these great stories that other people are telling. And I think when you think about it, when you get older, you realize that you do have funny stories. You do have good experiences. It's just like in the moment, it's not a big deal to you. So but then I look back at stuff that I did like in college that I'll tell somebody and they'll start laughing, or I got to experience something really cool that I didn't think was all that great at the time. But like going on a trip to, when I was in high school, went to New Orleans. At the time, I was like, great, I'm 18 and I'm in New Orleans. I can't really do anything. But now looking back on all the things we got to do, try Cajun food. We went on a cruise, went up and down Bourbon Street. Like, not everybody's going to experience that. So I think it's just you don't give yourself enough credit because you don't realize that you have gone through those experiences. But you got them.
Yeah, that's true. Just not as many, I guess. And like on the other side of it, like, I am glad that I do this because I also don't want to get 10 or 15 years down the road and be like, wow, I wish I was kind of what's the word? Chronicling. That's a weird word to say. Chronicling my experiences from something like this, because obviously we talk about wanting this to kind of be successful eventually, and maybe that won't be the case. And obviously odds are this won't ever be anything more than just something that a few hundred people at most ever listen to. And by the way, that's more than currently listen. So I'm not trying to say that hundreds of people are listening right now.
We have thousands of listeners, by the way. If anybody wants to sponsor, we're talking to you.
One thing I do hope down the road, and this is a realistic goal, honestly, I hope we find somebody or someone, I don't know, not even, didn't have to be a company, but just someone who wants to help promote it. And I think like a lot of shows, and I don't really listen to a bunch of shows, but a show that I listened to, kind of one thing that helped them get off the ground was just one person believing in them and kind of, I don't even know if investing is the right word, but just kind of giving them that extra boost. And so I think that's an attainable goal for us. And I don't mean to get meta, even though I do tend to do that on this show sometimes, or, kind of give you a behind the scenes on some of our aspirations. But because again, I feel like it's just me talking to myself. It's like the conversations I have each and every week whenever I'm like, it's time for another episode of Out of Touch. Where are we going to go this time? Am I wasting my my breaths each and every time I do this podcast?
Not at all. Because even if nothing else comes of this, one, most importantly, we have fun. That's great. But two, it's also like, I don't know, do you have aspirations of wanting to be like a radio host someday?
But it's not even really about, I've had people ask me this kind of question a lot, and it's like what is your ultimate goal with being in broadcasting? And I feel like it changes all the time. I think whenever I was in college, what I really wanted to do was host my own radio show, and it didn't have to be a radio show. I wanted to have my own show that could reach a decent amount of people to where I could honestly build a community. Mitchell and I have talked about this before when we're discussing why we enjoy streaming, or not necessarily us streaming, but watching streamers do video games and stuff like that. Like that's a market that a lot of people, especially older people, and I'm not knocking them, haven't always understood, because that's just not their lane. And it came about after, their time, so to speak, of getting into that kind of stuff. But for a lot of people that enjoy it, and shout out to Biscuit, who once again is in frame. For those of us who enjoy it, the number one reason that we enjoy those kinds of things is not because of what they're doing, because I could sit up here and do what I'm doing right now, talking into a microphone, and have a video game on a different screen and not say anything. And that's not fun. Nobody enjoys watching somebody play a video game. It's the conversations you have while you're doing that kind of thing. It's like you're hanging out on somebody's couch like you would back in the day, that kind of stuff. That's what makes those kinds of things appealing. And the same thing applies to podcasting, radio shows, even TV shows. If you feel connected to who you're listening to, or what you're listening to, or even the other people, your other, like your chat or and we don't have a live chat per se. Maybe we'll do something like that down the road. But the audience, sometimes the audience members can connect. And I think wanting to create something like that leaves an impact on people is the ultimate goal, because I feel like everybody wants to be able to make a difference with what they do, even if it's not necessarily the most important thing. Like, I know I'm kind of rambling, but I got one more story. Like in Louisville, you may have seen this past week, Dustin.
Yeah.
There was a semi truck that went off the 2nd Street Bridge in Louisville, and a firefighter was able to rescue the woman who was stuck in that truck after over 45 minutes. And thankfully she was unharmed. But the guy who rescued the woman, he was talking to reporters and stuff after the fact, and he mentions that's why he does the job that he does. That's why he's in it. And obviously that is a way more important thing in society than creating a show. I don't like to make it seem like this is super important, but I do hope, and I'm finally getting around to, I guess, the true answer to this question, is that my ultimate goal with this is that I want to be able to hopefully do something where I've created an environment where those who are listening or watching or participating look forward to being a part of it, whether it be daily, weekly, that kind of thing. And I guess I'll just leave it at that because I think I've gotten my point across at this point.
You did. Well, I think so. My goal every day is, I have a lot of goals, but my goal every day is not like with my job or with this podcast, is to just make one person like smile. Because you don't know what people are going through. So whether it's through this podcast, whether it's through a story I write, or whether it's through an interaction on the sidewalk, just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" Like that's my goal, is just like brighten somebody's day a little bit. And so I hope for the people that listen to this, whether we have a good show or a bad show on any given, I just hope it alleviates some of the stress. We all go through that. So I try to take people like, this is probably extreme, and now I'm going to go on a tangent, but it feels like I consider myself an entertainer, right? And I don't mean like a comedian or a musician or anything, but like people go to read my stories to get away from their job, from their life, even if it's just for 2 minutes. They need a break from reality. They come listen to this podcast because they need a break from reality. That's why we do what we do. That's why we have hobbies. And so I view it as like my personal responsibility then to be informative or funny or something to help them get their mind off of that. So that's like, I think we're on the same page there. And so I hope when people listen to this podcast or read my story or listen to a show that you're producing, I hope that they get that much out of it. Because I feel like even though it may not be as important as a police officer, a firefighter, a army, veteran or whatever, doctor, dentist, teacher, all of those are important. It can still have an impact on people.
And isn't it tough? Like sometimes it's really easy to compare yourself to that kind of thing when obviously it's a totally different world. And obviously I'm not even just talking because I'm sure there's people listening that like they're not necessarily in our shoes where they feel like they're just doing stuff for fun, but they may feel like they're at a deadbeat job where they feel like they're just deadbeat's not the right word, but a dead end job where they're maybe in their opinion or in their head that there's no way to move forward kind of thing.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's not the case.
Right. Well, and I think so, and I'm going to say this it doesn't matter what job you do. I don't care. Everybody has to have a job. Everybody's got to do something. And I think I've said this on this show before. When I worked at retail in Orlando, I had multiple people, and I just helped people pick out shirts. That's literally all I did, and checked them out. And they would tell me, "You helped us, you made our vacation. I've had a special birthday. You were a part of that." Like I did nothing. So even if you don't think you're in the best role or you think you can do something better or whatever the case, like you can still have that kind of impact on people. I worked as academic advising in 4 or 5 years. And you know how many thank yous I got in that job?
Again, we talked about thankless jobs earlier in the show.
I helped people graduate, and people that were on their vacation gave me more thanks than that. So
yeah. I almost said it. I know, but I was about to say the
new transition
phrase, and I was just trying to think like, what do I say here other than so there you go.
Right.
I catch myself looking at the clock because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm just like, I'm worried about when I've got to get out of here to go do this Louisville basketball postgame show. This Louisville team that I don't want to say I cover them because I don't. I just help run a show or a couple different shows.
Nobody wants to be associated with Louisville basketball right now.
It's nuts. And I guess we can talk about it briefly, but if you're anyone around here, because I know we talked March Madness earlier, and we do have people who listen to the show that live around here and they're familiar with U of L, but man, they are in uncharted territory when it comes to the depths that they have reached under Kenny Payne. And it's honestly, a lot of it's a shame because Kenny Payne is somebody who won a national championship with Louisville back in the 80s. Yeah. And for him to have gone through the past 2 seasons that he has coached this team, I feel for him because obviously I'm sure he wanted to have a lot more success than he's had, but some of the backlash that he has gotten from fans, from people in the media. I mean, I don't want to say it's not undeserved because, I mean, you have a job to do. Your job is to win basketball games.
Right.
And when you can't do that, I mean, here's the one thing about a collegiate head coach that I'll never feel bad for, especially nowadays. These coaches make millions of dollars, and a lot of them get paid millions of dollars to be absolutely horrible at their job.
Yes.
You and I, Dustin, if we decided to just mail it in, or even if we tried our darndest and it just didn't work out, we'd be let go. That's just how it works. Now, here's the thing: you'll get let go as a college head coach, but your contract normally, and actually in college, it's in any professional league for that matter, it's almost guaranteed. Like, you're going to have buyout money.
Yeah.
You're going to make you're going to make something from what you didn't make, and you're going to be well off. You essentially can get paid to suck at your job if you absolutely want to, because you have so much guaranteed money.
Wouldn't it be nice? Like, Ed Orgeron got paid, and got paid to get fired, and his response was, "Well, which door do you want me out of?" Jimbo Fisher got paid like what, $75 million or some
a record,
insane. I don't even know why you would even try. If somebody told me, "Hey, you can either do this job really well and make $80 million, or you can suck at your job, get fired, and make $75 million," do you know how much effort I'm putting in? Exactly 0% effort. I will find something else to do with my time.
And that's the thing. Think about some of these coaches that have lifetime contracts. Like John Calipari is someone who's a good example of this. And yes, they've not been terrible, but they've been very underwhelming compared to Kentucky standards in the past couple of years. But he hasn't made so much in his position. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's no way in hell that they could get rid of him, even if they want to. And honestly, right now they don't want to, because they've been doing pretty well as of late.
Right.
But when things aren't going well, John Calipari he says, he's the kind of guy, he says exactly whatever's on his mind. He doesn't care if he offends the fans.
Right.
He kind of just makes stuff up sometimes. He'll act like people are blaming players whenever they're really blaming him. He'll be like, put it on the players, or put it on me. Don't put it on the players. He just makes stuff up to create his own narrative. And it's just interesting to see it happen. Again, it's not happening at this very moment. It happened earlier this year. And he would skip post-game radio shows after losses because he didn't want to talk to, because he can do exactly what he wants because he's a made man in Kentucky.
So I'm going to bring in an out-of-touch thing to round this out, because I know you've got to go do this fun thing covering Louisville basketball here.
I know. I'm basketball's on the brain right now. That's why I've stayed in this lane for
my question. So let's pretend that you were a so-so basketball coach. You got fired and you got a $50 million buyout. What would be the first thing you would buy? This can even be just John Alden. Like, what's the first thing you would want to buy with $50 million?
See, what's funny, when I think of anytime someone asks me questions about the lottery, I'm like, oh, I'd pay the rest of my student loans off, because I am a responsible human being. But if I have $50 million, like, that's easily taken care of.
Yeah, you can wait till the next day to do that.
Yeah. Man, I would find some place that I've never been before and probably buy some land or buy a house.
Oh,
I'd probably buy land to build a house on. And of course I wouldn't build it myself for two reasons. I would have the money, and then I also don't have the skills. So,
I like that.
Twofer at that point. I don't know where that would be, but with that kind of money, I would have the freedom to search anywhere. And that's probably the first thing I would do.
I assume I'd have enough money to do this, but I think what I would do is, I'm a big traveler. I'm a big food person. I would say I would try to find like a food critic or somebody and be like, what are your top 3 restaurants? And in 3 consecutive days, I want to fly to each of those cities and try. I don't care about the cost. I just want to try the food at each of those 3 restaurants. They can be all steakhouses. They could be all seafood places. They don't have to be even $1,000 bottles of wine, whatever. They don't have to be $250 steaks. I don't know. I've never really gone in that lane. I've gone to a few nice steakhouses, but I want to go to like New York or LA, wherever they got the nicest, and just try it and see if because I think there is a difference between like a $30 steak and like a $75 steak.
Yes.
But at some point, I want to know if there's a difference between like a $75 steak and a $250 steak. So I want to have that experience. That's what I would do. And then I'd probably buy a house.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today, whenever you're listening to this show. So again, hit the hotline. Also, another thing, if you want to keep going crazy with hotline call outs, tell us what you do with $50 million. With
yes,
$50 million
first purchase.
502-830-9195. Couple things, a little housekeeping things that I was going to bring up at the beginning of the show before I wrap up as well. Guests, I'm shelving the band stuff because, and I'm not going to say anything bad about the bands, but just real quick, it's frustrated me to the fact I've reached out 3 times. They got back to me every single time, but would never follow up with me after I would ask an additional question about, scheduling it. And so I'm just leaving it be. If I ever do that in the future, it's going to be separate from this podcast because I also don't want to. I'm a fan of the band that I wanted to have on and talk to, and so I don't want to sour the relationship, and also I want to still enjoy their music and not be pissed off at them. But I did want to get clear that air that I'm shelving that little project, if you will. And we'll do guests in other manners. And I think one thing that we mentioned last week, we're going to bring Indie Hater 1 on, masked, if you will, just to kind of.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, I did have a conversation with him. He is willing to do it, so we just got to work out the
details.
Yeah,
we might do that next week. We'll see when we're going to record, and if it works out with his schedule, or maybe we'll work around it, and we'll figure something out. So, wanted to bring that up. Also, Apple Podcasts has been annoying as hell. Last week I was working on it, and there's no reason to get into the weeds with it because it doesn't matter to people who are listening. But I've got to find, apparently, because I don't have an Apple ID, I don't have an Apple phone. Like I've had an Android my entire life.
Wow.
It's a pain in the ass to try to connect all of my stuff to Apple because I don't have Apple products. And so maybe I'll figure out if Dustin or Mitchell can take care of this for me, because we need the show on Apple Podcasts. I wanted to have it on there a couple of weeks ago, and it's still not. And I need to do that sooner rather than later. So if you're somebody who watches on YouTube because you don't do Spotify and you'd rather do Apple Podcasts, my apologies. I'll hopefully that will be taken care of before the next episode, but it's been a pain for me. So that's it for me. Dustin, any closing thoughts before I wrap us up?
Nope. I think we've pretty much covered it today.
That's Good right. Stuff. You go watch your second half of Purdue versus Illinois.
Purdue.
I am going to go prepare for another Louisville basketball post-game show. Yippee for those of you. Or I know some U of L fans probably listen, so I feel for you. Till next time, thanks for listening as always. For Dustin and for Mitchell, for the brief moment he was here, this has been another episode of Out of Touch, and we'll talk to you next week.